WorldFish.net is African Women Fish Processors and Traders Network. It was founded in 2017 as a platform for women fish processors and traders in the continent to collaborate and cooperate. We do share best practices, our experiences, challenges, and learning together. We also advocate for issues affecting activities and facilitate enabling policy environment to enhance the role of women in the fisheries sector in Africa. Our role or our mission as WorldFish.net is to enable African women fish processors and traders to effectively manage their social, economic, and political development processes for improved livelihoods. Women make an enormous contribution directly through investments in fish trade and processing, and indirectly through unpaid labor, which is related in supporting men in the fisheries sector. They do face a number of challenges, which include poor and unhealthy working conditions, limited access to fish resources, lack of access to finance, lack of access to markets, lacking in business skills, which makes them uncompetitive, lack equipment, and limited access in regulatory processes. WorldFish.net is therefore a vehicle through which women can jointly address these problems. In 2020, a meeting was conducted between WorldFish.net and WorldFish to explore the impacts of COVID-19 on market chains, whereby WorldFish.net described the impacts of COVID-19 on businesses. A few questions were raised, and these include: is there an opportunity to study and document these impacts via a research partnership with WorldFish.net? Where does research play a role? How can WorldFish support WorldFish.net throughout this especially challenging time? Future collaborations, therefore, can be consultation to find key challenges and solutions related to COVID-19 and develop key policy messages. We kicked off in October, and on our radar joined in December. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, my name is Kasazi Nyendwa, a fish processor and trader based in Zambia and a member of AWFishNet as a youth representative for AWFishNet. Since COVID-19 hit us in Zambia, we've had so many setbacks. Business almost came to a standstill because there were lockdowns everywhere in the country. We could not transport our goods, we could not transport our processed fish easily or supply it easily because most of the places where we were supplying the processed products were closed. This affected us as a business. We had to let go of employees because we were not able to sustain them, pay their salaries. Even just sourcing fish became so difficult. Many fish producers were having challenges. The prices of fish feed, everything went up so much, tripled actually. And this affected the price and affordability. Our economy in Zambia was hit very badly. And right now, we are beginning to open up slowly but surely. Things are looking a bit better, but we are still very cautious of COVID. It is still here. We have to make sure that everyone is vaccinated and that everyone adheres to the COVID rules of masking and sanitizing to keep the rates of infection down. But COVID-19 has been a real big thing here in Zambia, and it has really affected women, especially because most of the women have been working in this fish industry and have been so dependent on the incomes to feed their families. to take the children to school, to provide the basic necessities for the children. And because of the stoppage in business, slowdown in business, this has affected how the women have been able to do all these things. Thank you.
What is community reporting? Community reporting is a term that we use when someone researches and reports from inside their own lived experiences and on the experiences of their communities, rather than coming from a place of outside observation. For RADA, our focus is on developing community networks among those who are underrepresented and facing vulnerable situations. We train them in research and reporting skills, help them to use their mobile phones to track issues and experiences, and mentor and coach them through reporting and research sprints. We also do the connecting work to ensuring their work is used to good effect and has the maximum impact for their communities. Why is community reporting important? Well, I think it's the best way to give people the chance to talk about their experiences and share their concerns and actions of their communities. Having a reporter who lives within a community means there is some amount of trust between the reporter and those they are reporting on and with, because they live together, they know each other, and understand the context. A journalist going into a community as an outsider has to take some time to build trust. People will feel free to talk and tell this. People will feel free to talk and tell their stories in their own way without being censored or filtered. There is more accountability and less concern that a story might be changed because of an editor's perception, misunderstanding, or bias. Even once the trust has been built, stories of experience unfold over time. A community reporter lives through that experience and can document it as it changes and emerges. The interesting thing is that many people already have skills that are useful to journalism: being observant, good storytellers, good listener. And now many people have good digital skills and mobile phones to capture and share information. They already know and understand their community issues. So you're just giving them few additional skills to raise the quality and relevance of their reporting, depending on what story they're capturing and what they're going through. How does it work? The first step is identifying potential community reporters and connecting with them. The best way to do that is by working with local partners. They might be involved in health, social support, education, and advocacy, for example. But critically, they know their communities and are working well with people and influencers in those communities. With some advice and guidance on suitability and safeguarding, these partners can help to identify individuals who might be interested and in a good position to join a reporting network and communicate the aims of the network with them. This first onboarding stage should help to define their availability and other additional support needs that should be addressed for them to be effective. The next stage is to adapt and deliver the communications training that they that they need and might that they need and want, that might, for example, focus on helping them to interview community members or people with local authorities, or understanding how to use their mobile phones for documenting conversations. Certificates and kudos are important to share as skills are acquired and tested. We use this training stage to also shape and clarify the areas of research we might want to cover together. Once trained and confident, the research and reporting can really start. As the community engagement officer, I run a weekly beat, keeping communications flow and starting reporting sprints. For example, I might ask them to go into a local clinic and speak to people who access these clinics to talk about their experiences in getting the free malaria treatment. For those questions, other conversations might flow as people in turn tell them about their wider health journeys and experiences. But our mentoring helps to keep things relevant and on track. All this community research will be recorded with the right consent and permissions on their mobile phones as text or WhatsApp chats, videos, recorded calls, and conversations, or just as call logs. All the content gathered is shared with a local number that's then posted into a central digital platform called Radius. If they are offline or comes in via our WhatsApp channel. This allows us to, this allows us at management level. This allows us at management level to be able to analyze and respond with ease to this report. All the submitted reports each week form a bank of collective insights which can be used for policy papers, press and social media, campaigns and advocacy. We also share the insight with services and delivery partners to inform their work and make sure that concerns coming from people are heard or addressed. Finally, feedback is the most important stage. People lose conviction if they don't know where their voices are being heard or if they are having an impact. It is important to make sure people have access to their own information to share as they see fit, as well as seeing the big picture and how their research fits in the wider story. We use mobile channels, but also video and radio playbacks, and even take final reports to people on foot if they live remotely. So that is it. Each time we run a research or reporting project, we give people the chance to stay with Radar in a long term, and we look out for as we look out for different opportunities, funds or contracts where they will be able to use their research skills again. Many use them to go into relevant work or education, but importantly, they all have made themselves heard and represented their community, whether that is in order to raise alarm over a crisis like COVID-19 or to push for long-term goals of addressing inequality and insecurity. Community reporting is a practical and active path to improving our depth and reach of our research and leaving the legacy of empowered communities who have a say on the issues that affect their lives. Thanks for listening.
Women fish processors and traders experienced and continue to experience dynamic, different and far-reaching impacts, with ripple effects to their households and wider community, illustrated in this figure. It's highly likely that the impacts will continue or even intensify as its impacts evolve unless effective response measures are taken. The underlying factors of gender inequities in division of labour, time, mobility and agency intensified COVID-related hardships and challenges faced by women and presented real limits to their capacity to adapt to the social and economic changes in lifestyle, work and food systems.
The study found that women fish processors and traders experienced impacts of COVID-19 on and across the three following areas and scales of their lives and businesses. Disruptions to fish food system functions, shown here in this first slide, and in the following few slides, impacts on individual well-being and knock-on implications in terms of own and household level basic needs. This slide provides an overview of those impacts to fish food system functions, including disruptions to production systems in row 1, storage and distribution systems in row 2, retail and market systems in row 3. For instance, changing market dynamics due to COVID, including market closures, caused delays in selling, contributing to increased fish quality losses. These disruptions also had negative effects on the well-being of women traders and processors. In this slide, the impacts have been grouped as number 1, impacts to economic well-being. For example, reductions in income and financial losses due to fish spoilage affected capital and women's bargaining power. Number 2, impacts to unpaid care work. For instance, women have shouldered the brunt of increased childcare responsibilities that have resulted from school closures and have thus experienced additional constraints on their time. Number 3, impacts to health. In addition to the physical health risks women fish processors and traders are exposed to in crowded marketplaces and landing sites, COVID-related declines in economic well-being and increases in unpaid care work have negatively affected women's mental health, manifesting in symptoms of anxiety and stress. Number 4, impacts to safety and social relations. For example, the scarcity of fish has intensified already unequal bargaining and power relations in the fish food system, and COVID-19 related restrictions have increased police presence around fish landing sites and along transportation routes, with women experiencing harassment and exploitation by police. Finally, this slide summarizes the knock-on implications of COVID-19 restrictions for basic needs of self, children, and families. This includes implications for food and nutrition security. For example, economic insecurity and declines in the availability and accessibility of fish and other food products have altered and reduced household food consumption, and some women have resorted to eating only one meal per day. Lastly, this includes impacts to education. Similarly, economic insecurity has also adversely affected school attendance by children, which risks knock-on effects of potential dropout, especially by girls. The next few slides are a deeper dive into the gender factors that have shaped COVID-19 experiences. Here is the first example on the gendered implications of post-harvest fish losses. Post-harvest food losses occurred due to a multitude of technical, finance, and information access issues, but compounded by gender inequalities. A disproportionate number of women experienced fish losses due to their labour roles. Among post-harvest fish workers, women are reported, in some cases, to experience greater losses than their male counterparts. COVID-19 containment measures have exacerbated the existing technical and gender constraints that lead to post-harvest fish losses. For instance, access to cold storage facilities became more restricted, transportation reduced or ceased, and processing infrastructure became inaccessible. Pre-existing gender involvement, barriers, and amplification to these barriers, such as women's increasing time burdens related to childcare, meant that women traders were hit the hardest. Subsequently, women traders sustained considerable economic losses as they were forced to sell fish at lower prices or discard fish altogether because of quality deterioration. The second example concerns gender power relations, including bargaining power and dependency relations. Women fish processors and traders remain dependent on fish supplies, which rely predominantly on fishers' ability to access and harvest fish. Changes to the availability and accessibility of fish due to COVID-19 restrictions have meant less fishers were able to access vessels and landing sites. As a result, catches and fish landings were low. This in turn has limited the supply of fish, creating scarcity in the marketplace. Respondents indicated that in some contexts, this scarcity of fish and tougher market conditions due to COVID-19 containment measures exacerbated sex for fish transactions. This reflects gender power dynamics in fish value chains and is influenced by economic hardship, which has worsened as a result of the pandemic. These power-laden practices can have perverse consequences for women's mental health and physical health, for example, exposure to HIV and AIDS and other sexually transmitted diseases. The third example relates to gendered responsibilities, including disproportionate unpaid work and time conflicts. For many women, COVID-19 containment measures have increased their time poverty. Women and girls in many contexts around the world have experienced increases in unpaid care and domestic work burden as a result of quarantine measures that have kept schools closed and children and teachers at home. Women fish processors and traders reported this to be common amongst their networks. Women also experienced increased expenditure, particularly on food, as children have spent more time at home, while at the same time contended with reduced income for the same labour input. This combination of reduced income and increased household spending on childcare have caused women some serious economic distress. Some women fish processors and traders' businesses have collapsed entirely as a result of these compounding and multiple pressures. In some cases, women reported elevated economic and emotional stresses had led to increased tension within the households, which contributed to increased incidences of violence against women. In combination with gender, intersecting aspects of identity such as socioeconomic status, age, ethnicity, marital status, migration status, and education play a key role in determining access, risks, benefits, vulnerabilities, and resilience in food systems, and in turn, individual experiences of COVID-19 and other shocks. The implications of COVID have been particularly devastating for widowed, divorced, and single women fish processors and traders, who experience an especially high burden of responsibility as they bear the position of main or exclusive income earner in the household or family. There were differences in occupation recorded. Women who are wholesalers, and these are women who sell fish in large quantities, often for resale and at comparatively lower prices, have coped with the disruptions better than other women retailers, and these are women who sell fish in smaller quantities, primarily for consumption. There were also differences according to socioeconomic status. Poorer women, for example, found it very difficult to recover or develop their businesses, as they found themselves in a vicious cycle of taking out loans to keep up with repayments of existing loans. In terms of other differentiating factors, two enablers surfaced in this study. They were social networks and digital capacities. Women with strong social support networks, including within formal and informal women's groups or savings groups, have been able to access affordable loans to rebuild their capital, resume their business activities, and provide for their family expenses. Many respondents reported the use and importance of mobile phone technology and connectivity increased during COVID-19 containment measures as a way of coping and adapting. Across multiple countries in sub-Saharan Africa, women fish processors and traders reported a range of similar experiences, including economic losses, increased distribution costs, and restricted retailing opportunities. At the same time, experiences also differed to some degree, depending on the severity of COVID containment measures and the context. The severity and scope of measures vary substantially between countries. For example, in Tanzania, the national government did not impose a lockdown, whereas in Kenya, in urban regions in particular, faced multiple lockdowns and curfews. Experiences were also subject to the context and vulnerability of the fishery within which the women worked. Women working in countries, regions, or sectors where the fishery and markets were export-orientated were particularly affected, including contexts where women work in informal trade across border with neighbouring countries. The commonalities across such a diversity of country contexts underscores the systematic nature of gender inequalities and structural barriers embedded in food systems in sub-Saharan Africa, At the same time, while a deeper dive into each context is required, the differences signal that policy and other actors will need to engage women's networks in specific contexts to understand, lead and contribute to gender-responsive recovery that is fit for context. Recovering from the COVID-19 crisis is considered by some as a window of opportunity to build a more inclusive, green or blue and resilient food system, and to address some of society's most concerning inequities. Investment strategies and policy prescriptions to build forward better need to be gender sensitive and gender inclusive if they are to take the opportunity to progress equity and inclusivity. The experiences and the recommendations in this report have been developed with and for women fish processors and traders across sub-Saharan Africa. The 10 recommendations that I will present emerge from this research and are for use by national government agencies, funders of national response strategies, and NGOs seeking to improve gender equity in fisheries and aquaculture, or transform food systems towards greater resilience and equality, and build forward better post-COVID-19. These 10 recommendations are oriented to the immediate hardships women fish processors and traders and their families are experiencing, and to enabling their adaptive capacity for the short and longer term, while also recognizing the pre-existing gender barriers in fish food systems, as well as human rights and food loss concerns. COVID-19 disruptions, responses and recovery outcomes, and how they will evolve are all in part shaped by adaptive capacities. Adaptive capacity refers to the capacity of individuals, communities or systems to adapt to change, and includes the conditions that enable or constrain responses and recovery from change. The findings of the study highlight both examples of adaptive capacity facilitating innovative coping strategies, and a lack of adaptive capacity hindering responses to COVID-19. Given the centrality of adaptive capacity to COVID-19 recovery, this figure presents the 10 policy recommendations in relation to building the adaptive capacity of women fish traders and processors, and as such, the resilience of the overall food systems. The framework we use draws on Sinha et al. 2018 and describes 5 domains or conditions that need to be met to enable adaptive capacity. They are assets, learning, agency, organisation and flexibility. The recommendations contribute to all of these domains, but are presented here under the domain that the recommendation most directly relates. The first 4 recommendations include: number 1, applying well-designed gender-responsive social protection mechanisms; number 2, extending affordable and flexible financial services and removing barriers to women's economic recovery and empowerment; number 3, increasing gender equitable access and availability of affordable fit-for-user drying, smoking and storage technologies and expanding physical infrastructure capacities; and number 4, increasing investments in sustainable management of fisheries and aquaculture and equitable access to fish. These 4 recommendations relate to building the resources people have access to. The following 3, including number 5, improving accessibility of formal and peer-to-peer business capacity development for women; number 6, empowering women through information and communication technologies; and number 7, enabling women to realize their right to information. These relate to the learning domain of adaptive capacity in this framework. The following 2, including number 8, enabling gender-inclusive fisheries and aquaculture governance, and transitioning rapidly to women's full participation and leadership in policy making; and number 9, recognizing that the agency of women fish processors and traders is vital to just, effective and efficient COVID-19 recovery plans. These are recommendations about agency and empowering people to actively shape their futures. The last recommendation, number 10, is about investing in collective organizations and networks. I will end here with 3 key messages that have emerged from this collaborative research. They are: 1, secure women's assets and financing to enable recovery; 2, transform decision-making processes to ensure equal voice of women in governance of fisheries, food systems and COVID-19 recovery; number 3, invest in women fish processors and traders' technical, human, digital and collective capacities. Implementing these recommendations will enable sector responses and investments to be more inclusive, equitable and effective. Thank you.
je suis Madame Baliava Nebe Nateba. Je suis la présidente du réseau des femmes transformatrices et commerçantes de poissons intitulé AWFishNet. Je viens du Cameroun. Ici, je voudrais remercier WorldFish et WAC Radar par rapport à leur formation qu'on a eue juste après la pandémie, je vais même dire pendant la pandémie, parce que la pandémie n'était pas encore arrêtée. Leur formation nous ont permis de voir les expériences des femmes africaines transformatrices et commerçantes de poissons face à la pandémie du COVID-19. Donc ça nous a permis à chaque membre de témoigner de tous les problèmes qu'on a rencontrés pendant cette pandémie. Alors, il était question, ils ont presque identifié nos problèmes, ils nous ont soutenus, moi particulièrement avec les petits fonds qu'ils nous envoyaient pour la connexion. J'ai remonté mon capital pour ma commercialisation, où je ne vais cesser de leur dire merci par rapport à ces gestes-là. J'ai trouvé leur formation très importante